Welcome. I'm Doug from HD Ellsworth. The D in HD, if you don't get it, you're definitely not my wife, and this is Dying to Retire. Join me on a candid journey from my government job to the freedom of retirement. As one of the last of the baby boomers, I am hanging up my federal badge and diving into what comes next. I will talk about what led to my decision, on why it was time for me to retire, and what I did right, and what mistakes I have made. I am not an HR expert, nor am I a financial advisor, so I have made a few mistakes. When I can, I'll slice through the noise of today's headlines with a sharp, no-holds-barred commentary delivered with the kind of honesty only retirement can afford. This podcast is a safe space for non-woke people, and while I try to keep everything somewhat above board, and if it has to be said bluntly, it will be. Vegas rules apply here, so let's get started. Welcome back, and I'd like to first apologize for the lateness of this episode. I've been under the weather a little bit. Even though I was off last week to take care of some family issues, I ended up catching a severe cold, flu, whatever you want to call it. However, it was not COVID. I ended up having, for about 3 days, a temperature of 104 degrees. It really sucked. So I really glad I'm back, but my voice is a little off. So apologies on that one. But I want to start out by recapping something from last episode, in which I was talking about the difference of reactions by sex when told by another person that they're planning to retire. How when men tell men, you get one reaction. When women tell men, you get almost the same reaction. However, when men tell women, it gets a very different reaction. And often, like I said, like in the barbershop, I got, oh, you're too young. You should still continue to start work. You're too young. You should continue to keep working. My husband died while he was still working. He never retired. And the attitude is, what's wrong with you? Why are you lazy? And even if they're not saying it, there's a whole lot of implicitness in there. So I had a good friend, Danielle, and she said, HD, let me tell you her perspective on it. She said it's not right, not wrong, but it's the women of today and yesterday. And she said she's hoping it's getting better. But this was the scenario. If you're well off and you're planning to retire, a woman sees you as still as someone who's able to generate revenue, income. So, like we all know, rich people, even when they're not working, they're still generating revenue. It's still coming in through their investments and everything else. However, step that down a few notches of wealth. You can be well off, but not uber rich. And when you're planning to retire, you've been saving, you've been putting money away for like a 401 or a TSP. You're putting a lot of money away. You went without of a lot of things, not a new car every 5 years. You didn't go vacations every other year or every year. All these things, you push it back. And even if the female, the wife of the couple, has her own retirement money and the man has his own retirement money, women see his retirement money as theirs as well. So whenever a man is taking retirement or early retirement, a woman can and does see that as a threat to her money for the future, even though she may have her own, independent boss bitch, all this other stuff. She still sees your money down the range as her money as well. So it is the old adage, and that's what Danielle was relaying to me, the old adage, the old adage, your money's our money and my money's my money, that you hear a lot of women say in relationships. They say it jokingly, but they're not joking. So she was relaying it. So again, women saw that as their money, not necessarily your money. And therefore, if you were starting to drain it before they came into retirement, that was taking away from their future monies. So it was kind of a shitty thing the way she was explaining it. I mean, she explained it well, but it's kind of a shitty experience for men that we still have to go through that. And she was going, it's not right. But that's why women have this look or have this opinion of men if they retire. Not all women, I'm talking in general. If a man retires, they're being lazy because that future money or future earnings is supposed to be taking care of them and their retirement where they can be twice as well than what they originally planned to be. So that's what my good friend Danielle was talking about. So let's move on. All right, let's explore the two sides of retirement: our cost of living and the mental well being for a potential retirement haven. So let's grab your passport in this thought exercise because we're about to embark on a little adventure. And hopefully, I don't confuse you too much because it's two articles I've put into one or that go together. So let's delve first into the cost of retirement. And I'm coming from an article from the UK Daily Mail titled The Cost of Retirement Around the World Map. The link will be in the description, which gives us a snapshot of expenses. Now, brace yourself because the numbers might surprise you. The study assumed a retirement age of 65 and analyzed the annual cost, including groceries, housing, utilities, transportation, and healthcare expenses, using the latest Bureau of Labor statistics. That said, one of the biggest takeaways, and that said, to me, one of the biggest takeaways from the article is nowhere in the US would $1 million in savings last longer than 22 years, 8 months, and 12 days. And that was Mississippi. That same amount of money, $1 million, would only last a little over 10 years for a person living in Hawaii. However, the United States, the price of living throughout the United States has significant differences in cost, like I talked before in a previous episode. So, in a bit, we each are like Indiana Jones, and we all must choose wisely. So, it's established. And to me, did it really take a scientific study to tell you and me this? That the average American cost of retiring isn't cheap? Didn't we joke a few episodes back, like I just mentioned, that we work, we taxes, we die, then we pay more taxes? So let's open up our retirement aperture. On average, some of the most expensive countries to retire in include Switzerland, the US, Luxembourg, Denmark, United Arab Emirates, and Canada. Wait for it, the crown for this most expensive place to retire at goes to Singapore, and this is on average, where an American would need approximately nearly 1.2 million to live comfortably. Now, that is actually less than the average required savings per worker for the state of Maryland. And if you remember, that was somewhere along the lines of $1.5 million US, not Canadian. So if we can have that collective gasp, that's quite a price tag for a retirement paradise. That's an expensive LBFM. If you don't know what that is, ask your father or uncle who was in the military during the 80s and 90s in the Far East. However, I digress. What really gets me is what the article's top 10 list was: places to retire, which to me was filled with several F no's. Reason why? Pakistan was number one, with only needing about $158,000 in change. But somehow I don't see my lily white Christian ass doing well there, no matter how cheap. The same goes for many of the other top 10 cheapest. Number two was India at 186,000 in change. Three was Colombia, which I would think about was just a hair under 200,000. Then you had Algeria as four, Tunisia is five, Egypt was number 6 with 217. Uh, in there, Sri Lanka, I think that was 227 or something like that. Sri Lanka, Nepal, Macedonia North, which I would think about it, which was under 230, and then Kosovo, which probably would be a no, at around 230 even. Now, it gets better and more interesting when we swing the pendulum to the other side of the spectrum of retirement. When we start looking at our mental well being, which is equally crucial in our retirement. The other UK Daily Mail was based on a 2023 think it's called Sapien Labs, which did a worldwide study examining countries' mental health quotients based on trends across 6 dimensions. And let me be on there. The 6 dimensions were mood and outlook, which is your ability to manage and regulate your emotions effectively and have a constructive or optimistic outlook of the future. The second dimension was drive and motivation, which is your ability to work towards achieving your desired goals and to persuase, initiate, persevere, and complete activities in your daily life. The third was cognition, which is your ability to perform basic cognitive functions, make sense of complex sets of events and situations, and display a longer term perspective on your thoughts and behavior. Number four was what they call social health. Apologies here as my computer starts going crazy. How social health is how you interact with, relate to, and see yourself with respect to others. Five was mind body connection, the regulation of the balance between your mind and the body. Not always exactly sure what that means, but we'll take it. And the sixth and last one is adaptability and resilience, your ability to shift your behavior and outlook in response to changing circumstances and cope with challenges and setbacks that you encounter. So here's the 6 dimensions. Each dimension was scored from 1 to 200. And with a final score, what they did was take the averages of all six of these together. Scores over 80 were considered good. Scores over 100 were deemed extremely well. Anything less than 80 going down there was middle road. It's not average. Doesn't meet the basic like IQ function of 100. So in the study, the US found itself as rated in the 29th spot in the middle of the road with an MHQ score of 72. It didn't even make 80. Trailing behind unexpectedly contenders like Dominican Republic, which was number one of those six indices with a score of 92, and Salvador, or El Salvador, some people like to call it, at number eight with a score of 83. Way to go, Bukele. That's the president down there. And I guess locking up gang members, people who commit crimes, terrorize the nation, pays off for the people. Surprisingly, the USA was closely followed by Guatemala in 33rd position, which scored an MHAQ of 70. But it should be noted, Guatemala has a higher score in one, drive, motivation, and adaptability and resilience, and mind body connection. So, in three of the categories. Guatemala also had the same score as mood, outlook, and near same score as social scores as the United States. Where Guatemala got beat was cognition, which drove the US's average, scoring 2 points higher at the 72 versus the 70. And I don't know about you, but cognition, the ability to perform basic cognitive functions, really only affects the natives and not so much for us expats moving there. So, like I've told you before, the reason why I mentioned Guatemala, that is a place where my wife is originally from. That is where we're looking about retiring, taking over a family home there. So, ergo and my optic, this is a stark reminder that pursuing happiness goes way beyond the numbers of our bank and investment accounts. The most expensive place to retire, Singapore, was rated number 21 in this study, MHQ, with just a score of 76. So money doesn't buy you happiness. Yes, you get a lot of things, but are you happy? So that's one thing you have to look at the study. Now, here's where looking at both studies simultaneously was intriguing when you line them up. And one day I may put this into a spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet, linking the scores, but also the cost of living together. What's interesting in the scores before we go into this little next part here is the scores were not weighted. Each one was treated equally of the six indices. And if you throw in cost of living, that should be a weighted score, is what, in my opinion, be a weighted score. So that's why I want to throw part of this into a spreadsheet, put it in there, see how it looks, and then put a weighted score on it where we can really see which one looks a whole lot better. Because I'm going to tell you right now, what's more important to me might be drive and motivation, adaptability, resilience, and mind body connection than cognition. or social self, because I'm retired, I'm having a very different thing. I don't have to be all out there. So these are things you may have a weighted score of 1, or the score just times 1, or the other ones may be a weighted score of 2 or more. Cost of living actually probably is gonna have a weighted score of more than 1. So things to look in there. So getting back here about the study and what's so intriguing. While the cost of living might be sky high in some places, our emotional well-being can find solace in more affordable locations. I mentioned, according to the cost of living study, cost to comfortably retire in the Dominican Republic was a little bit over $288,000. Remember, they had a social score, or the MHU score, of 92. Salvador was a little bit over $287,000 is needed, and they had the MHAQ score of 83. These were part of the 2 top 10s. And for those eyeing Guatemala, just like I just said about my wife and I, the price tag was around just a little bit under $340,000, how much money you needed to retire there. Now think about it. You take your pension if you have one, you take anything else you have. You can live more comfortably in another country nowadays than in the United States. Yes, you have to overcome a couple things, but Spanish is spoken in my household. Now, who would have thought that pursuing happiness, or at least the mental health quotient, could be and would be budget friendly, as I just spoke about? And the thing we got to remember is we juggle the financial realities of the mental well being indices. It's a reminder that dream retirement is not a one size fits all scenario. We each have our own things that we're looking at. That is what makes us all individuals. It is a balancing act. Finding that sweet spot where the cost meets contentment, and our mental well being flourishes alongside our financial stability. However, to close this, looking at the 2 studies, I want to wrap up this little global exploration thought exercise and point out a couple things regarding both studies and their UK Daily Mail articles. Mainly the problems we need to look at when you're looking at studies and looking at things like this: sampling biases and author biases. While both articles were interesting, as well as the studies they were based upon, it was obvious that the authors of each article had some cultural leanings. For example, the article noted many people based in America prefer to retire in South Asian countries, including India, Pakistan, Nepal, and Sri Lanka, which were on the list for the cheapest places, due to the lower cost of living. Now, that term, people based in America, is not, and I repeat, not talking about your average American citizen. It's not even American citizens. It's people who are here in the United States for work, be it academic, other visas, and these countries that the author mentioned are actually their countries of origin. So to them, they are going back. It's making money in the United States and going back. The other example of potential sampling bias is where the mental health quotient study, resulted in the currently failed socialist state of Venezuela landing in the number 7 slot with an MHQ score of 83. Really? This is where I believe the survey sampling had some degree of influence by the host nation controlling who can be on the internet and can't. Because again, it was an internet based study. Excuse me there. Because Venezuela is somewhat of a failed state. It's not going well, as obviously in the United States, we're getting all the criminal things coming across the borders illegally. So for them to have an MHAQ combined score of 83 is a little disheartening, because when the scores were going in the responses to the people taking the survey, how much truthfulness was going on there. So that's why you need to always look at the articles and do a little bit more research, read a little bit more in each one when you are looking at your retirement options. Not only where to live because of the expenses, but how is the lifestyle? How is the life? So, wrapping up this global thought exercise, I encourage you all to consider both the tangible and intangible cost to retirement, like I am doing, because it's dying to retire. It's not dying to go broke. All right, moving on. Now, I'm going to segue a little bit back to where took that class at work, that 2-day class for us who are getting ready for retirement, our federal employees who had 5 years or less in there. One of the topics in there, do you take your health benefits, keep them going? Yes, I'm going to be doing that. I see the long-term benefits on there for my wife and I. Do you take FSA, your flexible spending? I never did my flexible spending. The reason I never did it was I had saved it 1 year because I wanted to get the LASIK vision for my eyes. I saved it, got it ready, went down to the laser place, and they're like, "Nope, um, your eyes are so screwed up, you need to wait another 5 years." And every 5 years after that, it became the same question or same response. So I just stopped doing that. But the thing to come is, do I FEGLA or no don't FEGLA, which is the Federal Employees Life Insurance Plan. Do I take it or not? It's a group term life insurance available to me and my family as a federal employee during my retirement. I have it now because there is a 5-year rule. You have to have had it for 5 years if you want to continue it into retirement. Now, because I will be retiring prior to the age 65, the premiums will be on me. It's basic life insurance. I can get, I think it's like one starts at like $15,000. That's the basic, starts like a couple dollars every month for every $1,000 of coverage. But then you hit the option B, I think it is, or the option A or option B, that now I have to start doing the multiples of my regular salary. That turns into several $100s a month. Do I need to be paying for it? It is supposed to be there to replace your salary. But if you're no longer working, what salary are you replacing? And just pulling this out of my ass, the $1,000,000 I have in my investments, if it died, it goes to my spouse. So she gets that. Does she really need a salary supplement when she has that? So those are things I have to look into and that anyone should have to look into. So that's what I'm currently studying and looking at because I pay 2/3 of the premium for the basic life insurance. The government pays a little bit more. As you get older, this gets more expensive. I know it caps out, but I also do have an understanding for the basic at 15,000 when you turn 65, I think the premium goes away and the government pays it all. But however, every year after that, I lose 25%. So is it something worth me paying? I'm gonna be looking at it. I'll let you guys know more later on. What is the best things? Shit, I'm even running through the ChatGPT and other stuff to look at what's the cost benefit for me. So the question's still out there. Should I take FEGLI or not when I retire? Because it will affect the check size, my monthly check size that I want. So those are things that I have to look at. So I'll just stay tuned and I'll keep you posted. Folks, I just want to recap before the end of this show. Remember a couple weeks back, I mentioned the drugstore in the DC area to thwart shoplifters. They put out photos of products instead of actually having the products out, which made it, which to them would stop shoplifters, but at the same time made it very inconvenient for the customers to be able to shop. Well, it didn't stop shit. People still came in and stole. In fact, they just did a beeline straight for the storage room to grab the stuff and walked out with big plastic bags of merchandise. Didn't stop shit. Now that store has closed, no longer servicing a much needed our neighborhood that much needed it. It is now no longer there. People can't go get even their prescription drugs that they needed. That was really behind a more secure area, let alone go get toilet paper, cough medicine, any basic stuff. Because corporate never wanted to charge anyone. And the neighborhood mentality was, oh, let people, they're just robbing you because they're disadvantaged, which is not right. What I find funny is that recently in Maryland, they had CPAP in which two of the guest speakers, prominent speakers, one was Bukele from Salvador, the president who's cleaned up, went from the murder capital of the world to one of the more safer countries to be in, and Milei from Argentina, who's really taking over a socialist country and putting it on a libertarian track, had to go tell conservatives what it meant to be a true conservative. And one of those things was putting bad people in jail and openly admitting you have to put bad people in jail. So I just find it ironic. That's it for today. curious, concerned, or just want to chat, I'm all ears. Reach out at dyingtoretirepodcast@gmail.com. And if you find yourself nodding along or you just enjoy the ride, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Hasta luego.